All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to tonight's Town Council Candidate Forum. My name is Harry Schofield, and I'm with the Narragansett Peer Residents Association. Before I introduce our questioners here, fellow questioners, I just want to ask all of you to please turn your cell phones off or put them on silent so that we're not interrupted by that. We want this to move along efficiently, and that will help us if you help us. I'm joined tonight at the moderator's table by Paul Zonfrillo from the Village of Point Judith Association, Dennis Pelletier from the Briggs Farm Homeowners Association, Chris Sullivan from the Pettisquamscot Lake Shores Improvement Association, Steve Rondi from the Eastwood Look Property Owners Association, and Jerry Bonner from the Metuxet Improvement Association. I'd also like to welcome all of the candidates for Town Council. This town is facing many important issues, and we all appreciate your participation in this event. So this event is being videotaped, and the video will be posted on YouTube for the benefit of all Narragansett residents and voters as soon as possible next week. The link to the video will be published to the NPRA website at www.peerresidents.org. So you'll be able to go there, get the link, and be able to watch this on YouTube next week. The format of tonight's event is as follows. Each neighborhood association will ask 3 questions. Each question will be directed to either 1, 2, or 3 candidates. This has been planned so that each candidate will get to answer an equal number of questions. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to respond. A short bell will ring at 1 minute, 45 seconds by our bell ringer to alert you that you need to wrap up your response. A prolonged ring at 2 minutes will indicate that your time is up. After all questions have been asked and answered, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to make a closing statement. We ask our audience to be respectful at all times. Again, we ask you to please silence your phones and to abstain from applause or any other noise. We just want to move this along efficiently. This event will last 1 hour and 30 minutes and conclude at 8:30. We're going to begin now. Let's begin with the first question, which will be asked by Paul Zonfrillo.
Good evening, candidates. Thank you for coming this evening. This question is directed first to Jill Lawler and then to Patrick Murray. Now, you're both incumbents on the council. So what is your most significant accomplishment of the past 2 years? And please be specific as to how it benefited the residents.
Good evening, and I hope I'm not the first person to wish everybody here. It's National Pepperoni Pizza Day, so happy National Pepperoni Pizza Day to all of you. Interesting question, Paul. I think I would have to say the one thing that I have done over the last almost 2 years now is ask some really tough questions. I've seen councils in the past as I've attended council meetings, and I've watched that there are so many important issues that people want to stay away from. They're afraid to ask an important question, a tough question. They're afraid to ask a question that might not always go in the way that things have always been done. So I think that sometimes I've been challenging to other council members as well as to our town staff in trying to make sure that our residents are getting the best effort possible by asking things and wanting and demanding that things be done in different manners.
Thank you. Patrick?
Hello. Good. All right. Thank you for having me here, all the neighborhood groups. Patrick Murray, 83 Nepog Road. Well, I've checked off quite a few boxes since I got elected in 2014. But I'd say one of my favorites is something me and Ray Rinaldi put together, which was a $35,000 exemption on businesses for their tangibles. Basically, there's a commercial tax on furniture, cash registers, fixtures in a business. And we passed an ordinance where the first $35,000 is exempt. So it's basically a business the size as Crazy Burger, you know, and up. So what it did was it gives smaller businesses a major tax relief. And the finance director, Laura Kenyon, she really liked it because it freed up a lot of her staff. Because they were using a lot of staff hours chasing $100 or doing mailings to, you know, go after people for these forms that aren't filled out correctly. And so I like that one because it was simple and it had a lot of impact. Thank you.
If you've got time left, Patrick, over the past 2 years was kind of the question. Do you have anything from this term?
This term, let me see here. I'm run through this term. Oh man, let me see. I don't know. Well, I guess the vote on rejecting the condo library concept, that was something that had to be done. That certainly got a lot of boos initially. In fact, there was about 300 people. And, but what it did is brought Gilbane back to the negotiating table. And we were able to cobble together this
15 seconds.
this new deal, and I think it's going to work out to the town's benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Okay. I'd like to thank the residents and the candidates for attending. This question is directed first to Wynn Hames and then to Patrick Murray. Hypothetical. If you received a $1 million grant to use for the town any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why?
$1 million grant. Well, since I'm on the rec board, I would fix up the, I would fix up the facilities at the, down on Clark Road that sorely needed. There's a building down there that's basically falling apart. What else would I do? That would be about 100 or maybe 200,000. I'd definitely work on the beach, doing improvements on the beach. That was another $500,000. What else of $1 million? Well, if you look at the library, we can probably use more money towards the library, probably do a better job than what we're probably going to end up doing at the library. I'm pretty sure that the police and the fire are all set, but if they needed any supplies or anything other than with the they can't get through their drug money, money would definitely go to there. Look at the schools, see if the schools needed any additional. I know the football team right now is in dire need of pads and helmets and uniforms. There's little things like that that can be spread all over town.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
It's only $1 million, right?
Only $1 million.
Okay, all
Just $1 million.
I'm a Democrat. I can spend as much.
Oh, I know. That's why we're here tonight. I think I would take that $1 million and put it towards the roads and get the road situation behind this as quick as possible. We do have bond money left in that. I think we're more than halfway through that bond. It's a slow, grinding slog because of regulation. If you get near a wetland, drainage issues, DEM, contractors. So I think $1 million would definitely put some sand on the track to get that project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's forum. This is a question from the Petacombs Lake Shores, and it's a question directed first to Rick Lima and then to Jesse Pugh. If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why? Rick and then Jesse.
Well, I think we have to look at the zoning code and revamp quite a few things in there. You know, we're trying to do a four unrelated, and I don't think we're having much success with that from what I'm hearing. Neighborhood groups are a little upset. The people that own the rental properties don't want to take on the responsibilities. So, I mean, everybody's got to ante up here. Rental owners have to take responsibility to who they're renting to. The renters have to be fair to the people of the neighborhoods. They want a great quality of life. And I just think that we need to look into that. We need to look into every option there is and finally lock that door. We haven't locked that door. So that would be the number one thing that I would be looking into.
So one of the things that I hear from some of the businesses on Boone Street and the residents on Boone Street is there's just general confusion over the zoning in that area and parking issues and just kind of a lack of clarity on what's happening with that area. So I think that just a general review and kind of reforming of the zoning in certain areas would be helpful. I think it's going to help clarify and get rid of some confusion. There's a lot of aggravation. When I speak to the owners of the Bike Stop Cafe, they talk about how they are having issues with the parking from the basketball games on Boone Street, from the people that are going to the beach on Boone Street, taking parking right around their restaurants. But then you have the residents, and they're kind of in a different situation. So that's a tricky area that I think is not well defined. So that's one thing I would look at. Another issue, which is I think a little bit more controversial, would be the use of ADAs, which are accessory dwelling units. We have I think at least, we have a clear issue with the housing crisis in this area. Some areas are not going to want any increased density, and this is a question that was on the questionnaire that we answered about a month ago. But some areas could use increased density. So an ADA is an accessory dwelling unit, which is a small additional housing unit that could be placed in somebody's backyard. So I think in some neighborhoods, this would make sense. When you do that, you increase the amount of people that can live in an area without building any new homes on new lots. So these are lots that already exist, and you're accommodating in-laws, college, maybe an individual college student, a son or a daughter, to fit into that space without having to overbuild an area. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates and residents attending. This question number 4 is from Eastwood Look. This question is directed to Matt Mannix first, and then Jesse Pugh. Okay, let me begin. Rental registrations have increased by 18.4% over the past 10 years. During the last 8 of those years, Narragansett student school enrollment through grade 12 declined by 12%, and even more troubling, by 17% from pre-K through 4th grade. The data reveals a high correlation between the steep rise in predatory investment, rental properties, and the resulting student enrollment decline due to the loss of families. Given the limitations of the current zoning rules, would you support a review of all zoning regulations, height, density, rental ratio, and other measures? And would you undertake and approve comprehensive ordinance changes that reduce the growth in rental properties in favor of families to address the ongoing imbalance in residential neighborhoods? This is for Matt first.
All right, hello everybody, Matt Mannix on the Town Council. So we've been working on the issue with the rentals and really trying to encourage more year-round residents to come here. One of the keys to that is keeping our taxes as low as possible, which is something that I've worked on the council since I was first elected. In terms of the zoning regulations, I think we need to have them be strongly enforced. I think sometimes we forget we're a small town that wants to keep the small town character instead of essentially sell out to some of the out-of-state rental interests. And yes, I would definitely look at changing zoning regulations on height limits and proximity to wetlands, especially in light of some legislation that's been passed regarding height limits where within a certain amount of the water, within some of the flood zones, there's going to be an opportunity for building beyond the 35 feet, the height limit. So the houses that have to be on stilts could be really, really high if we are looking by the ocean and some of the areas in Sandhill Cove and parts of Bonnet and down to Metatuxet by the water. So yes, to answer your question, I think we need to address those. And some of those were brought up by the zoning subcommittee of the ad hoc committee. There were some ideas that they had brought out that I think we focused on the foreign related, which was great, and we got that through, and that was a long slog to get that passed. But I also think we need to pick up on on reforming the zoning.
So, yeah, I would definitely support reviewing the zoning, height restrictions, setback relief, exceptions, everything that you mentioned. I'm right there with you with these concerns. So I support the homestead tax or homestead exemption. I don't think everyone on the council voted in favor of that, but that's definitely something that I would keep going. I would actually think about a partial homestead exemption for landlords that rent out their homes year-round, not specifically to families, but year-round rentals. I think year-round rentals is something that's somewhat overlooked. Not everyone's going to ever buy a house, so some families will live in a year-round rental and stay there. So I would reward owners that rent their houses out year-round as well. What else? The low taxes. I think low taxes are great. No one's going to be against low taxes. The flip side is that it does attract the predatory investors as well. But we need to keep them low because young families need that relief as well. And it makes a big difference when you're buying a house here as opposed to South Kingstown, where their taxes are about 50% higher, which could be $300 or $400 on your mortgage if you're buying like a $400,000 house. So yeah, I would definitely be interested in reviewing all the zoning and specifically the height restrictions and putting limits on reliefs and try to stop people from wedging in houses where they probably shouldn't be. So thank you.
Good evening, candidates. This question is directed to Jill Lawler and then Matt Mannix. I've been told that this year's kindergarten class in Narragansett will only have about 60 students. It was 100 students 10 years ago, 150 students 10 years before that. If the number of college rentals continues to increase, what will the town look like in another 10 years? How could the next town council attract more year-round families to Narragansett?
This is, I think, a pivotal issue for our town going forward. It's sad that our population for our schools is going down because our schools are certainly excellent schools and people would love to come. But the fact that the cost for a home for a small young family to move into is so high is problematic. So what do we do for that? There are many things we can do for that. Someone just mentioned the homestead, that some individuals on the council did not vote for the homestead. I was one of them. I didn't vote for the homestead because I'm in favor of a more of a two-tier system for residential homes and then one for a business tax. I think if we're able to somehow get to the year-round resident and find a way for them to be able to be here and not rent out, we'll be able to attract more of the young families. I'd also want to take a look more at working with our superintendent. I've done a lot of reaching out to our superintendent over the last 2 years to try to find programs that we can work with and try to attract young families to town. One way is what we're doing. We're including additional curriculum that is attracting families to come. But it comes down to that one element of affordability in the town. So we need to look at that. We need to look at a tax break. We need to be creative and think out of the box. There are many things that we can look at, going forward. This term has been very frustrating for me because many of the issues surrounding foreign-related, someone mentioned, and this issue, we've kind of gobbled up most of our time in looking at one project, which is the library. And that's been difficult because for the majority of the town, I don't think that's their top issue. I think the top issue for the majority of the town is quality of life, is attracting these young families, is being able to sleep at night, not be woken up. I walked in here tonight and was immediately greeted by some of my neighbors who talked about the amount of noise coming from our neighborhoods.
Yeah, so we want to encourage a greater sense of community, a greater having the young families, because my class, graduating class in Narragansett was one of the smallest. It was 100, I do remember that, and I think it went up a little bit, but now it is small again. The things that I would look at and that we try to focus on, I think it is related to some of these zoning issues and some of the what I say was before almost a tolerance of the partying and allowing those things to go on. And I think we've made a strong step toward enforcement, where we're basically enforcing the laws that we have on, public disorderly conduct and disruptive behavior, because I think that sends the message that it's not going to be a free-for-all. So I think that's part of it. Again, I will go back to, I think it's going to be hard to target a tax that would specifically help to get some of the younger families here. But we could look at some of the assessments that continue to climb, and that's one of the reasons we did look at the homestead. Right now, it's a modest homestead. We could look at a larger homestead exemption. So, but it is something that I worry about, and we need to find ways that we encourage the behavior, we make it more palatable for young families, that it's a place that is welcoming to them and not as welcoming to party houses. So, thank you.
Okay, this next question is from NPRA, and it's directed at Susan Bonanno first and then Jill Lawler. In the latest NPRA annual membership survey, 74% support an ordinance that restricts overnight parking for cars without stickers and prohibits parking on lawns. 61% also support limiting the issuance of overnight parking passes to 2 passes per rental home or unit. These are the same rules recommended by the ad hoc parking subcommittee several years ago. Would you support implementing these changes next year if elected? And if not, why not?
So as far as the parking goes, there's issues all across the town. There's a municipal committee right now that consists of the town manager, the chief, and some people at the town hall. And they are looking at it comprehensively throughout the town, because there's problems all over the town. Some people don't want parking on the street. People don't want, people, in their way of their driveways. So I would leave it up to that committee. I would take the information from NPRA and other people from the town that have expressed their concerns about parking. We have issues at the beach. We have issues on main roads in the southern part of Narragansett. And so we need to look at it holistically and go by each area of the town and go through those ordinances. So do I think that on-street or off-street parking, it depends. Some of the roads are narrow, some of them are, right now, ordinances say that you can park on one side, some say you can't park on either side. So I do think we need to study it, and we do need to go through the entire parking situation in the town. So what exists presently, every time an issue comes up, another neighborhood comes and they want the restriction, and we just keep kicking the can down the road and we don't solve the parking issue. So I do think we need to look at it town-wide, and depending on the streets, depending on the location. So I guess that might be a vague answer, but it's a very complicated issue, because once you squeeze an area, then there's another area.
What is your opinion of these three, of this specific question?
Would I support the off-street parking in those particular
Yes,
areas?
limited off-street parking, no lawn parking, and 2 parking
I
passes.
believe,
That specifically.
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you. Jill?
Yes, I support that. As a matter of fact, over the last few months, I put an agenda item on to help out individuals on Major Arnold Road to get some parking restrictions in. They were quite concerned that emergency vehicles could not be able to go down because of the amount of parking. And I agree with Susan, we need to take a look and have the parking committee take a look at that town-wide. But how do you really solve it? You really solve it by trying to take a look and get a handle about how many people are living in all these rental properties. And we need to do that, and one way that in the survey that you all sent to us, one response that I gave was we need to really understand and find a legal way to be able to go into these homes to make sure that people are safe. People are safe. That's the key issue. So one thing that I would like to do in my next term, if you will have me be elected, is to be able to work with the town building inspector. We're going to have to hire on many other assistant building inspectors in order to do this. And I've also spoken with one of the deans at URI, and they like this idea of student safety. My niece went to the University of Villanova, and Villanova did something I believe very smart. On their website, they have a list of all off-campus housing that has been safety approved by the town, meaning someone has gone in there, seen a carbon smoke detector, making sure they're 10 years, making sure they're operable, making sure there are forms of egress in all the bedrooms that are existing in that town. I think it's a valuable source and a source that we owe to the students who live here. We owe it for many reasons for their safety, but because they are registered in a database by our town is saying that we know that people live in that house. We live in an era that there are many attorneys. Why should we leave our town wide open for any type of lawsuits in addition to any type of precious life loss from a UNRI student?
Questions from Point Judith, directed first to Patrick Murray and then to Matt Mannix. Thinking back over the past 2 years specifically, past 2 years, your term on the council, how would you assess the current college student situation over the past 2 years? How's the town doing? And what are your thoughts on continuous improvement or the need for continuous improvement over the next 2 years? So how are we doing now? How would you assess the current situation? And what kind of improvements do you foresee in the next term, if any? First to Patrick.
Well, we have a new police chief. He's about 2 years into the job, and he's been proactive in this area. And, certainly the bad period of the years are when they first get into school in the spring and when they're leaving, when they get in the September and when they're leaving in the spring. So those weeks there, those couple weeks there on either end, they step up patrols. They're more proactive during those times, which has been beneficial. Complaints have been down, arrests have been down, noise complaints, and what have you. As far as moving forward, we have the 4 unrelated. That's certainly based, we're waiting to hear on the Providence 3 unrelated, and we're going to springboard the 4 on that decision. So it's stay the course. Certainly, right now it's a police action enforcement issue of town ordinances, and I think our police chief is doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know it's the last 2 years, but I'm going to go just a touch before that when we were doing our town manager search, because I've been through 3 town manager searches. Susan's been through more. And what we did in that interview process is we talked about the concerns that the neighborhoods had about student partying and student rentals. And that was a big part of the interview process. And when we got down to our finalists, Patrick and Susan were on the council with me, that was a big part of the interview process, and so that set a tone for our new town manager as he came in. And in my conversations with him and with other department heads, I reiterated those concerns, to increase enforcement and to have a focus on this issue of the rental issue. And so I think that was an essential piece of making improvements there. I will agree with Jill. I think the last 2 years, some of the changes and reforms we could have been done were crowded out by other issues. Sometimes that's the nature of the beast in politics. There's other issues that come up, and it's not as much of a focus, but I felt that it was a bigger focus 3 years ago for the town. I also think you look at what works. Well before I was on the council, in Bonnet, Anne Marie's friend Carmen worked on at the community center in Bonnet, restricting overnight parking there. That was something that worked there because we were having, the Walking Dead walking around at 12:30 and 2 o'clock, and it was a big problem because they were out and about at that time, and basically what was going on, they were parking at the community center and walking to the parties. The overnight restriction really tamped that down. Fast forward, I went around with Steve Ferrandi to look at the same problem Eastwood looked when they were looking at their parking restrictions and said, this is what worked there, let's try to implement where can we make this work for Eastwood Look and other neighborhoods. So you look at what works and you set the tone.
Thank you.
Okay, this question is directed to 3 candidates. Jesse Pugh first, Jill Lawler second, and Rick Lima third. In your response to a recent questionnaire, you indicated that infrastructure is the single biggest issue facing the town of Narragansett. Can you be specific? And what new steps can be taken to address this?
Sure. So I think infrastructure is probably the biggest issue in most towns, and I think it's a pretty all-encompassing term. So when we say infrastructure, the way that I think of it is streets. Here it's the beach, sewers. A lot of neighborhoods are still in septic, and I think that's something that we should work towards alleviating. We should try to move as many neighborhoods over to sewer as possible. We have to, obviously work with the neighborhoods and the residents there to do that. But yeah, I mean, you talk to any resident and the roads come up. So that's something where it's just a slow process, something that we need to continue to work on. By the time the roads are done in town, they're probably going to start over and start fixing the ones from 10 years ago. So I think infrastructure is always where it has to start. If you skip those core fundamentals, then I think you're making a mistake. So I just think that that is something where it goes to the core of the town, especially here as a beach town. That's something that we always have to stay on top of. So thank you.
Thank you. Joe?
So for infrastructure, I would have to say the first thing for me would be roads. So how could I see that happen? I'd like for Patrick to get that grant for $1 million so we could apply it to the roads. If you could do that, Pat, that would be wonderful. But that is the #1 complaint we get in town, the roads. We received an email from a woman that lives on Haven Street, the town council did just last night, and went out there this morning to take a look at it. And the roads are a problem. I mean, you can't want to have as many potholes as we need. It's difficult that we all understand how to drive around. I see people go through roads and everybody knows which potholes to avoid, and it's just not a good thing. It shouldn't happen. So roads, are #1. Sidewalks in the pier. I mean, we need to correct these things. If we take a look at our town buildings, I spoke with Rick Lima about this not long ago. Our town buildings are in need of repair. I mean, we need to take care of our own house. Just like you all take care of your own homes, you need to put money in, invest money for maintenance to keep the quality up, so all of a sudden you don't. I spoke with Carol tonight, Carol Stewart, and she mentioned she has her house and it's about 30, 40 years old, and it's getting to a point where there's a lot of things need to be done. The town is like that right now. There are a lot of things that need to be done to our buildings. They're failing us. Water lines. We recently had a crisis with Suez Water that I also believe the town could have done a better job with informing the public and keeping everybody up to date, but our water lines are old. Patrick brings that up constantly, that we need to take a look at that and do something about that, or potentially we could be in harm's way. And the last thing as far as our buildings and our infrastructure, the building we're in right now, I think that this building is a tremendous waste to the town. It's an incredible resource. We have the ability to be able to write grants specifically to seniors. This could be a great senior center, and we should do it.
So everybody likes to mention roads, and I've attended several town council meetings. And the big thing that we're faced with in this town with the roads is, and I'm not aware if anybody's aware of this, is we can only do so many miles of road a year. There's 105 miles of road in Narragansett. The last bond that they took, which they're still working off of, will do approximately 20 miles of road. Brings us down to 85 to 80 miles of road left. Out of those 80 to 85 miles of road, there's probably 30 miles that need to be done as soon as they can. So think about it. 1 mile to 2 miles maybe a year. That's what's going to get done. That's as much as they're going to be able to do until we put more money into the program. And to put more money into it, we've got to grab money from other places. We can't go spending money foolishly. Our buildings. Take a look at our buildings. Narragansett's great for building beautiful buildings, but then there's no maintenance program behind them to maintain them. I'm not going to throw numbers out there, but the town hall, if you knew what it would take to bring that town hall on a 1 to 10 up to an 8, you would drop. There are other buildings like that. We have a school bond that's out that we're still working on. and we still don't have the HVAC system in the middle school. So we really need to get on what we own and what we have now and get that fixed before we start moving for new projects to spend other monies on. Thank you.
Thank you.
This question is directed to Jill Lawler first and then to Win Hames. This is a question about transportation and traffic in our town. Do we have enough transportation options? If not, what will you do to increase those? How would you address the traffic concerns or change the situation?
I've never had anyone ask me about increased transportation issues. Can you elaborate on the question?
Sure. Specifically, what I'm
Yeah.
looking about with transportation is not necessarily just the cars on the road. It's different ways to transport people. And in particular, I'm looking for some information on the bike path.
On the bike path, okay. So it's kind of more of like a recreational, are you trying to bring people to town, or you want to update on the bike path? I'm not sure what you're looking for.
You could do that if you'd like.
The bike path is something that's widely needed in town. It's making great strides. We have some Tom. They're not here tonight. The Smiths have done some great job in being advocates for the bike path itself. I would love to see it connected at some point, even to go as far as to Wickford. It would certainly bring. We were talking about before. How do you bring young families to town? If you have more things like bike paths, it's certainly another thing, a recreational reason to be able to bring people to town. I think as far as other transportation, I guess I've never had anyone say we need more commuter buses. I've never seen that, so I'm sorry. I'm going to totally bomb on this question. I don't know how to answer it.
Well, the second part is about traffic also, if you want to do a little bit more into the traffic part.
Traffic. Again, this is something else I've never had anybody call or comment on for traffic, other than when I met with Dr. Dooley. Matt and I met with Dr. Dooley about a year ago, and he mentioned that the URI students were complaining about the amount of traffic in town so much that they were thinking about building a dormitory that would be more of an apartment-style dorm, because the URI students were getting angry with how many people actually live down here. They actually had to wake up a little earlier to drive to school. So Matt and I encouraged this, saying, we hear that it's going to get even worse, and that it's going to really, wake up even earlier. So let's just hope that they build those recreational dorms up there so that they can sleep in a little bit longer.
And then Win Hames would be the second part.
Excuse me, traffic. I live on Wood Avenue. For those of you who don't know where Wood Avenue is, as you go past the beach, it's the first road on the left. It's a dead-end road. In the summers, it's 4, 6, 8, maybe 10 minutes for me to get out to the road. But I don't see any way that you can control or divert the people around, we used to have a trolley in town. It couldn't operate, mainly because of the town's restrictions on the insurance policy that they needed. So in order to protect the town with the insurance policy, they could not make money doing it. That was a nice way. I know a lot of people used to take tours around town and park at the school. It's too bad that went away. I would like to investigate, see if there's some way we could bring something like that back. But as long as we've got the Block Island Ferry leaving here, as long as we've got 5 best beaches in the state, I don't think there's anything we can do, unless we put a big roundabout where they can just come in and go back out. Other than that, I don't know of much. As far as the bike path, I think it's on. The progression is very good on it. I think we'll see a completed bike path within 3 or 4 years, if not sooner.
Okay, next question. Eastwood Look. This question is directed to 3 candidates, Jesse Pugh, Patrick Murray, second, and Rick Lima, third. Investor-driven rental properties are destroying Narragansett neighborhoods. In keeping with the town's comprehensive plan to increase full-time owner-occupied residency and full-time family ownership, what initiatives would you bring forward to accomplish this goal? Jesse?
Thank you. So just to give a little background on kind of my experience here in Narragansett. So I grew up here, went to high school and junior high here, and went up to Boston for college, and then moved back down here with my wife and 2 daughters in 2012. So I grew up in Metatux and had a lot of friends actually who lived in Eastwood Look, families that were living there. I think it's changed obviously since then a little bit, that neighborhood. And now I live in the Pier, and there's one family in our neighborhood. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. And I know that there's really not enough families in town. So a few actual concrete ideas that I have to help with that would be, first of all, I am open to increasing the homestead to help young families out. I think that tax money does make a difference. I'd like to see some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Additional people showing that that is something that they're interested in as well. So I don't want that to be something that I'm, driving solo on. So if there is agreement on that, that's something I'd be open to. Additionally, the idea of using state funds to help young families with down payments on first homes in Narragansett is something that I think is interesting. So I've talked to Mike DeLuca over at Community Development about that, and he's really interested in a program that would do something to really tangibly attract families into town, because the fact of the matter is it's not really the college students that are keeping families out, it's the price of housing and to get into town. So you really have to just put programs in place that will help with that. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, certainly, the rental issue is main concern for this group. But I think we are a victim of our own success. The price of houses has risen as much as 20% in the last 3 years. And the average home right now is right in the low 400s. For the predatory investor, it's not cost effective to buy a house, rent it out. I mean, you can only rent it out per bedroom for so much. It gets to a point you're not going to rent it. And market saturation. There's a lot of homes, there's some homes that I hear, because I'm in the market, that they're not being rented. Certainly the summer rental, that doesn't seem, that's back and forth. So I think the market will take care of this situation. Certainly, I think a bike path, instead of dithering in the Pier about the bike path, let it end at Mumford. Let's use the old Seaview Railroad to the north of Sprague Bridge to get everybody off Boston Neck Road, for God's sake. That's one of my concerns. But, we've been a 3-tier neighborhood. 1/3 of us live here year-round. 1/3 have homes here but don't rent, and they live out of state or they live, in the northern part of the state. And 1/3 are rentals. And them numbers have been pretty much the same over the years. So I don't think we are losing families as stated, but I think the market will take care of itself. Thank you.
All interesting to me, because I've lived here my whole life. Let's face it. Let's face the facts. Houses are what, 400,000 on the low end? What family is going to come to Narragansett, 400,000? First-time home buyer. Not unless their parents give them a hell of a loan, okay? It's second-time home buyers that are trying to fit in down here. And then they're trying to fit into a neighborhood that suits them. And Eastwood Look isn't going to suit them. Not with if you have rental properties overburden them. So we either have to think about how we're going to put pressure on these rental properties and make the owners responsible for the actions that are happening in these houses, or otherwise they'll take over. And we're almost to that point, if we're not at it now. I know a lot of people that have moved down here. I worked in the city as a Providence firefighter. A lot of those families up there saved, bought houses in Eastwood Look so that they would have something when they retired. Most of them want to sell out now. They're disgusted with it. Metatuxet, Petaquamsket, they're trying to hold their own. There's families down there that are actually buying houses and hoping that their families can move into them. So to say that we're going to be a first-time family home buying town. That's not what we are. We've lost that. And unless you can get a developer, and I'll say this, it probably won't happen, a developer that wants to sell land and build houses for affordable housing, which means affordable housing of 270 to 329,000. But why should he when he can get 450 and 500? That's the issue. Thank you.
This question is directed to Susan Bonanno and then Win Hames. In your response to a recent questionnaire, you indicated that the town pension and other post-employment benefits are the biggest issue facing the town of Narragansett. Why do you feel that this issue is more serious than the growth of student rentals? And how do you propose to strengthen the financial health of the town's pension plan?
So this sitting council that we have presently fully funded the pension and the OPEB, all the liabilities for the town for 3 years, yeah. So we did that through negotiations, and we saved millions of dollars over the next 20 years or so. So I think that that work that this sitting council did is critical in our future in the 21st century. So, that was one of the biggest concerns people, they want to watch the spending, what's important. I think, the roads are important, and I think all the things that were mentioned by my colleagues are important. But I think funding the OPEB and the pension is something that we've heard across this town from everybody. So I think that was a great step for this council. I'm proud of that work, and we continue to negotiate with different organizations within the town to try to get those savings. Oh, sorry.
I'm not as privy as Susan with all the negotiations, but I think in the long run, we have to take care of our financial responsibilities. I mean, it's like we're dealing with a giant credit card. The worse it gets, the worse our credit rating gets, the more money, more it costs us to borrow money. It's something that has to be sustainable. It has to be solved. I think right now they've done a great job in funding it for 3 years, and I think that has to continue. There can't be any lax actions about it in the future. So it is very important in this town to have a very, very sound financial basis, and this is the key to it.
Okay, this next question is from NPRA, and this question is directed to Susan Bonanno first and then to Matt Mannix. In the latest NPRA annual membership survey, 71% indicated that they personally experienced negative impacts from rental properties. In your response to a recent questionnaire, you indicated that you are in favor of the foreign-related ordinance. Besides the foreign-related ordinance, what else would you seek to do to improve the quality of life of residents? Further, if the Providence unrelated ordinance is shot down, this is the second part of the question, what alternative ordinance would you approve to prevent overcrowding of rental properties?
So I was certainly for the foreign-related, worked very hard with the last council. That is something that is near and dear to my heart, and it came up through all the difficulties with the students. I think there are a lot of things we can do, and we have been doing. One of the outreach has been working with the URI Senate to meet with students to talk about the issues. Just recently, I'm working with the manager and the chief about setting up another forum to talk to the students. I mean, I think that the town has worked on enforcement. We've worked on grassroots to talk to the students, to work together, to make the quality of life issues improved. We've put ordinances into place, and I think we've done, if you looked at last Sunday's paper, Narragansett has really moved in the right direction, and I'm really proud to say the chief has led that in the work with the police department on more enforcement. So I think we have to do a lot of different things. Meet with the constituents to talk about how their quality of life is, what else can we do. But I think pulling in URI, I was around when we had the URI coalition and we met with different groups. But I think it's important in that conversation that we talk to the students and bring them in. There are organizations in the town that are educating the students and having them work with them. And I think that's critical in the work to make the quality of life better. As far as the four unrelated, I'd stand by it. I'd go to court for it. I hope that, we can continue to bring it all the way to Supreme Court, and I stand by that. So, again, the legal counsel was, let's see what happens in Providence, and that was the guidance that we got, and I think it was good legal guidance. It doesn't mean that we poo-pooed it. It just means that we have to wait our time on it.
Okay, last part of the question was, is there an alternative? But it just, let's move to Matt.
So it's one of the things is it's a big issue of local control. So that a town like Narragansett saw a problem and wanted to go about restricting from more of a law and order perspective, saying this is what we want to do with the four unrelated. Providence similarly has an ordinance. It's more focused on it's not quite four unrelated. It's more focused on student rental, but the same problem. There are certain communities in the country that don't want to have those restrictions because they have different things they're catering to. They have a lot more rental interest. They're more of a tourist focus and that type of thing. So I've always advocated for that local control. Very disappointed that our municipal court judge declared throughout essentially our four unrelated ordinance. And there is a mindset, and I cut this out, and it's from the judge back in the 90s, Judge Fortunato, who said, judges must legislate from the bench. That's the mindset. That's the mindset that you're up against among the establishment across the state and the country, and it's not about local control. So that is part of it. So that is a big part of the puzzle. So I think it's important for us to be focused on that and always advocating for our local interests. In terms of other issues that we could go forward with, the zoning subcommittee suggested extending the fine for unruly behavior to not just the student, but not just to the unruly behavior, the person who's exhibiting the unruly behavior, but also to the landlord and to basically to the homeowner. I think it's something that we should pick up where we left off on that. And as I said, other issues crowded this out this term. I would pick up on that in the next term if I'm fortunate enough to be returned.
This question is from Point Judith to Jesse, Wynn, and then Susan. On February 10th, the Democratic Narragansett Council Facebook page posted, and since then that post has been deleted, but I do have a copy if anybody would like a reference. Quote, "We have to find candidates to support Susan. She is getting hammered up there by the 3 Trump Republicans." Now,
That's me.
I didn't see that.
I'm a Trump Republican, for
now,
the record.
I presume that when you're the chairman, so you either approve this or... So for some context here, if you have 3 people on the council, they run the government, right? So you 3 are aspiring to run the council, right? So the first part of the question there is, if Susan had the support of that, she lacked, how would the last 2 years have been different? And why would the town be better off with the 3 of you running the government, starting with Jesse?
Go ahead, Jess.
So it's a little bit difficult for me to answer that one. I'm not aware of the post. I don't think I even was on the Democratic Town Committee when that was posted. So
the rest of the question still applies, right?
not really, because I didn't make the statement. So
Well, the question is, how would, in the last 2 years, if the 3 of you were running the town, how would the town have been better off? And in the next 2 years, why would the town be better off if the Democrats ran the town? So you can certainly address that.
Sure, yeah, I'll address that. So my closing statement will address it as well. So my philosophy is, especially at the town level, I really don't care what party anybody's in. It's an unaffiliated race. I like it that way. So I would, my goal is to work with whoever's on the council, work and try to compromise before we vote so that we can get as close to having a 5-0 vote on all issues as possible. When you have a 3-2 vote, 2 people feel like they lost. I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think it's beneficial to anyone in the town. So I think, you know, you really want to compromise. You want to work together. There's too much divisiveness on the council now. So I think that, you know, it's impossible to say how things would have gone 2 years ago, but I could tell you that if I was on the council, I would work with whoever's on it, whether it's Rick, Matt, Jill, whether they voted for the library, whether we agree on the town budget. I think respect is the most important thing, and that's what I'll, you know, definitely hope to bring to the council. So thank you.
I'm the one that posted it, so is this on? It came out of a very frustrating evening, but my thoughts about the town council are similar to Jesse's. I don't care what party you belong to. You can't bring it down to the town level. You have to do what's best for the town. When you start following certain policies or things that the national party or national leaders are doing, and they're not good for this particular town, then yes, I'll speak up against it. The only thing that I've ever wanted in this town in my 65 or 70 years, or how long ever I've been here, it's whatever is best for the town of Narragansett, okay? I would like to say I'm in favor of everything that's best for the state of Rhode Island, but I'll still put my town first. We had several frustrating incidents. One was Governor Raimondo asked for a resolution in support of her going against Trump's policy of offshore drilling. We could not get that passed on this council. Another resolution was asked, could we get, with Nellie Gorbea, could we extend the voting? We could not get that resolution passed with this council. And I also think over the last 4 years, although Patrick now is a supporter, has done a great job working with the library, this library project should have been done a long time ago. And those are the type of things that I was upset about when I put that post on. What was a part of, is there another part?
And how will, so when you, if the three of you were to be in charge, how would it be better going
Well,
forward?
I think the three of us would have definitely supported an objection to offshore drilling. We got 5 of the greatest beaches in the country here. We have the Port of Galilee. If any town in this country should be against offshore drilling, it should be us. Okay, and why we can't get a resolution to support her being against that? Is again, the library, with the 3 of us on there, I think the library
Okay,
would have,
I think
you
you
know,
have to stop when.
progressed
So-
even more.
So, doing a
But
nice job.
I
Chris.
did take it down a couple days later because I said, you know.
So,
I took it down last
I
week.
actually didn't see the post either. I just learned about it at this very moment, so I'll talk to Win after the forum. But, you know, I've been blessed to serve in this community 20 years. I have served, it's a nonpartisan group of people. I've served with Democrats and Republicans. And one of the reasons I believe I continue to get reelected is because I am the voice of the people. People, I listen to the issues, and so I don't look at them as Democrat or Republican. The issues that the town is facing, and I listen to the masses of people that call and email and see me. So it doesn't matter, you know, Democrats, Republicans, it's the issues. And I think this term, we have had a variety of different votes, and I think that's healthy in government. 3-2, 4-1, 5-0. It would be not good government, I think, if we all voted all the same. We all have different beliefs. We represent different people with different beliefs. So I actually get frustrated when we vote a little bit, and then we go on to the next vote, because that's what happens in government. You get a vote, and it goes for the constituencies that you represent, or it doesn't. And so it doesn't matter for the next election. I hope who's ever there has the same philosophy, whether it's 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. It's about the people and the issues for this community. And so I think that's the most important thing. And yes, it gets frustrating, but I think even though we get frustrated, you know, we continue the work for the people, because that's our responsibility. So you might see that frustration, but I don't think government runs smooth all the time. There are spirited debates and differences. Do you want a library? Do you not want a library? What do you think the most?
So just to clarify, Susan, because you didn't really answer
Okay.
question. So it wouldn't have made any difference if you had more support in the last 2 years, and it doesn't matter going forward?
So I think we've gotten a lot done on this council. I do. I think when I think of all the things that were accomplished with the makeup of the council, even with the frustration, we got a lot of things done. My hope is who's ever up there will get some things done. So
Well, I want to also say thank you for reading. I didn't know if anybody ever looked at that.
I'm a big fan, Win. You're
Thank
probably going to ban me from the page now, so that's okay. What's that?
One thing, since I had a little bit of time left on mine, just a quick little note, just so it's totally clear. There was no coordination in running these campaigns, so I ran completely on my own accord. I don't think Win even knew I was going to run, and we all are running for our own issues. And mine is really to bring families back into town, so it's not a coordinated effort in that way. So just want to make sure that's clear.
Well, there is a lot of joint campaigning between you and Susan, so, you know, you guys.
Well, we go
so-
to
But I'll move on.
Okay. This question is directed to a single candidate, Patrick Murray. In your response to a recent questionnaire, you indicated that lack of affordable housing is the single biggest issue facing the town of Narragansett. Since much of what would be considered affordable housing is purchased by investors, how are the college rental issue and affordable housing issue not related?
Well, it is related. Again, we have three different groups. We got the rentals, locals, and people who have homes but do not rent them. Now, one of the four unrelated is all well and good. Say we pass it. Enforcement is going to be an issue. If somebody has a 5-bedroom and the building inspector comes in because there's a complaint and there's 6 people in the house, they check the lease and it's 4 people on the lease, and these are my 2 friends. So I don't see how you can enforcement. In most residential leases, you can have a guest for up to 10 days without even reporting it to the landlord or the homeowner. I think the direction to go in is hold URI accountable for the behavior of these students. That has been an issue that nobody addresses. That is, if in all the ad hoc committee meetings, what pointed out to me was in 10 years, I asked a question specifically to, I think her name was Gonzalez. She was the president of the Student Affairs. And they haven't expelled one person in 10 years. They haven't suspended one person in 10 years on their own 3-strike policy. So if somehow we have to get URI to hold their off-campus students accountable. And I think that would address a lot of our issues. But go ahead, I know I've drifted here a little.
No, yeah, the question was, how do we keep affordable housing
Right,
from getting
right.
scooped up by investors? That was the essential-
Understood. Well, again, I had a single tax rate. It was going to lower the commercial tax rate. I believe that would have provided opportunity for small family business to come into town. And I was told that we don't need another clam cake shack. But there are other businesses that you can work out of your home that are, you know, that have tax advantages. Okay, come on, ring that bell. Jeez, is that it? Okay.
The third and final question from Pettaquamsett Lake Shores is addressed to Susan first and then to Jesse second. Which 3 candidates would you prefer to see elected to the town council? You may include yourself. Will you be willing to put aside personal differences with your fellow town council members for the good of the town? And if your personal differences were to cause the town council to not function cohesively, would you be willing to resign?
So did you say which of the?
Yep, so which 3 candidates would you prefer to have on the town council with you? You may include yourself.
That is really a question. I would work with, yeah, I mean, it feels, I really feel awkward answering that, but I'm going to answer it because you're asking it, and No, I feel like it's just not a good question for me.
You want to
It's
move
up
on
the
to the other
voters,
parts
so-
of it?
Yeah, go on to
You want
the
to dismiss
second.
that one?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to put aside your personal differences with your town council members for the good of the town? And if your personal differences were to cause the town council to not function cohesively, would you be willing to resign?
Absolutely, and when you are working, you don't always get along swimmingly, it just doesn't happen, but I have never not been able to get the work done, so at times you get along, at times you get frustrated, but if I ever thought it was a hindrance and I wasn't working for the people, I would absolutely resign. So I've worked with a lot of different councils, some easier than others, some willing to, I've always been known as sort of bringing people to the middle, and I've been sitting in the middle seat, and I haven't been successful so much this term, I'll say. But that is what I've been known for, the middle ground, sort of fair, and so this term, more than all the other terms, has been the most difficult.
So do you want to go back to the first part of the question then? Which 3 town council members would you like to sit up there with?
You're going to include yourself. You can answer the question.
I'm going to let the people make that decision.
Okay. Jesse?
So 3 or 4 others?
3.
3 others. So
And you
just,
may include yourself in those 3.
just Patrick Murray. No, I'm just kidding. You're good. Yeah, you're fine. So I would. So since it's we live in a representative democracy, I would say that the 3 other members that the voters of the town choose are the ones that I want to work with. So you want to work with the members that the people want to be up there with you, with. So I think it's a pretty easy question, and I think, in terms of personal differences, that doesn't really come into play when you're doing work, when you're doing a job for the people of the town that you live in. So I don't think that personal issues would come into it.
I think the text of the question was whether or not there are certain candidates you feel are more aligned with your beliefs for the important issues of the town, not personalities. I think that was the text of the question. So.
Was that the question?
Obviously, if you're going to pass your agenda, you need 3 votes. So who are the other 2 people that will get your agenda through?
I think that, everyone up here is flexible and willing to work
Who
together.
are the 2 people that are going to get your agenda through? I mean, you and Susan are dodging the question.
I'm not dodging it.
No, I don't think you're
I
dodging
said
it
that,
either, Jesse.
the people that are voted in are the people that I want to work with. I think that's who the people of town want. I'm not going to push other candidates on the voters. So that's my answer.
And so
Thank you.
if there were differences with you doing certain agenda items, that's where the part 2
Yeah,
comes
I
in
just
and-
don't know. I don't know enough about the candidates to know what we agree on and disagree on at this point. There's obviously the library. I think that the library is going to be pushed forward enough by the time that we start that that's not going to be an issue. And I think other agenda items, we might have small differences, but I respect everybody up here, and I'm happy to work with any of them. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, moving on. Okay, this is question 16 from Eastwood Look. This question is directed to Patrick Murray first, and then Rick Lima. Okay, here's the question. Due to the lack of transparency concerning the 4 unrelated outcome, would you consider an initiative of adding a monthly agenda item to the town council meetings to ensure our neighborhoods are kept informed as to the town's position in the future? And would you direct the town solicitor to discern the differences between the Providence unrelated ordinance and our current unrelated ordinance and the feasibility of adopting either ordinance in our town? Patrick?
Okay, it's my understanding that the city of Providence has a file this thick of their brief supporting this 3 unrelated. And it is well-versed, this is what I hear from our attorney, it is well-versed, it is consistent with what we're trying to accomplish, and it's a wait and see. As far as an update, the wheels of justice move slow. I think anybody at any time during an open forum can look over at the town solicitor and ask him for an update. So my belief is to stay the course, And if it gets, if the decision's made in our favor, then we can move forward from there.
There
Thank you.
still might be some time lag between the point it moves forward and how we specifically might enforce, so
Understood?
we try to get the
Understood.
solicitors to look into it a little bit. That's what the
Okay.
gist of it is.
So again, I believe the question was, would you attempt to move forward ahead of Providence? I'm willing to look at any options that get us to move forward. I mean, if we're not moving forward, then we're going to be waiting. But again, if elected and I'm the only one that wants to do this, then it's a dead issue. As far as being open about most of the stuff that is out there as far as what is brought to the council, yeah. I think we need more open government to the people in this town to actually give them the truth of what's going on, whether it's objective or not objective. There's going to be a lot of issues coming forward with certain things, and there's people that wish that they could just put the blanket over it, and people, if they don't educate them, then they won't know. I feel that everybody should know. It's everybody's tax dollar out there, right? And whether it's right or wrong, let the people make that decision. That's who we're supposed to represent up here. Not every plan will be the best plan. Not every dollar spent will be the best dollar spent. But the information needs to be truthful to the people of this town. Nobody should be in a dark closet. And there's a lot of dark closets out there. Believe me. I've been here 60 years. Don't tell me about closets. I know about them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question 17. The question is directed to Rick Lima and then Matt Mannix. Would you support the funding of a professional study in 2019 as to how the town could recreate a town center with a library at its anchor? If yes, how much money do you think should be budgeted for the study? And what is your plan B for the library if we were unable to purchase the Belmont building?
This is interesting because you have GP properties or real estate down there. It's not Gilbane. There's another Gilbane company, and they're very great people. They build all over the world. So it's GP properties down there. Interesting that I do travel a bit and I do get around. Don't you think if GP properties thought that they could bring one of the best villages to Narragansett, they already would have developed it if it was a moneymaker? Absolutely. If there's money to be made in the pier, they're going to do it. They're going to do it ahead of us, okay? I just think that you could put a casino in that area of town, and January through April, good luck trying to make money. Yes.
Yes or no to would you support a study?
Yes, I would support a study, okay? We do need a study.
And do you have a plan B if the library?
Well, Plan B would be, again, I was hoping that the library would have a Plan B, but I've never heard of a Plan B. Plan B, we have this building. We have the school. I've lived at Mumford Road. The school would be a Plan B, possibility. I don't think the library has a Plan B. They want the GP building. That's understandable. But what if that doesn't get moved forward as fast as they think it is? What if there's alternatives that hold it up? How long do people want to wait? Do you want to wait a year, 2 years, 3 years? So I think we need a Plan B. This could be a Plan B building. The O'Brien wing could be a Plan B building.
It's me, yeah. Is this the last question?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, good, I get to go last. But no, I wouldn't support a study of the pier. I think there's, I wouldn't. And in terms of a Plan B, I've talked about a Plan B for the library from the beginning. There's been two kind of options that have been discussed pretty much throughout the last several years. And when we put it on, we had a work session about essentially 4 options. One was over here. One was knocking down the existing building, one was renovating the existing building, and one was the IGA building. And we, as a council, said, the plan A will be the IGA building, and the plan B, if we don't get a good deal, the plan B would be to fix the existing building. And we've lost track of what the goal of the library of the library reform is. It was to make a better library and to make it ADA accessible. That was the mandate. The issue that we had with the state was the ADA accessibility. And I just thought it was bizarre on Monday night when we were talking. I didn't even feel I was talking about a library anymore. I felt we were talking about this complex way, moving parking spaces in the pier and this whole chess game. And so in the end, I think a more modest proposal, I come from a place of lower taxes and being responsible with the taxpayers' money. And I did always say, if we don't get a good deal from Gilbane, then we should fix the existing building. People talk about the oldest reimbursement, but the dollar value of fixing the existing building to make it ADA accessible and making some modest expansions is going to be less than if we do the whole IGA and get the oldest. So I think that it's been a struggle for me because I've sat in these executive sessions for some time and been frustrated by essentially a very difficult Gilbane.
Okay, this is the last question, and it is from NPRA. And this question is directed to three candidates, Jesse Pugh first, Susan Bonanno second, and Win Hames the third. So in the latest NPRA annual membership survey, 90% believe rental properties are operated as businesses and should be taxed as businesses. 80% of full-time residents are in favor of use of the three-tier tax rate. The three-tier tax, which would be a commercial rate and two residential rates, one for people who rent and one for people who do not rent, allows rental properties to be taxed at a higher rate, while both seasonal and full-time properties who do not rent could be taxed at a rate equal to or lower than the current homestead rate, which is applied, of course, just to full-time families. The three-tier taxation also enables further reductions in the commercial rate if the town wanted to do that. So there's a lot of flexibility with such a large percentage of residents in favor of a three-tier tax rate. How can you justify your lack of support for this initiative? And what else would you do to address the steady rise in rentals and the loss of families with school-aged children as effectively as this could? Starting with Jesse.
So I actually don't think that the three-tier would help increase the amount of families and kids in the schools, because what it would increase or aid in is empty homes in the off-season. So if anything, I would actually offer a partial homestead to owners who rented out their houses year-round in places like Mettatuxet and Briggs Farm, because I think that's going to actually help bring families to town because there's going to be a higher inventory of year-round rentals. A friend of mine listed his house as a rental in Indian Trail, Forest Lakes, for I think it was like a 3-bedroom for like $2,000, and within 2 days he had 18 applications. So that shows that it's a serious crisis for families who want to live in Narragansett, even as a rental, just to get into town. So I don't support giving a tax break to people that leave their houses empty. I think they have an extremely low property tax, which is great. I'm totally happy with the property tax. I don't think an additional discount is prudent, really, in that situation. So I am open to thinking about creative ways to restructure the property taxes in general, and I'm open to working on the business tax. So I'm not completely rigid with that, but I do think that helping out people that are willing to rent out their homes to families year-round makes a lot of sense in my opinion. So thank you.
Susan?
So I'm not in favor of the three-tier tax. Presently, we have a 2-tier system. I think it works well. Listen, when we talk about how we're going to tax, that is the most passionate issue from the residents. We've had workshops and public hearings, and we've gone from one tax to two. There's been a variety of discussions around that. So I like the two-tier tax. I think it works well for the town. Would I be open to, conversations in the future? Maybe, but I'm satisfied with the way the tax structure is set up. And what was the second part of that, Harry?
Well, if you don't like that approach, what else could you do to, moderate or reduce the steady rise in the rental houses as opposed to, houses bought by, families who want to live in them? What else can you do in a tax sense to modify the trend? That's the second part of the question.
I don't really have that answer. I know that's been an ongoing issue. I mean, I don't know. I think, like Jesse said, if you don't have any, if you're not renting it and you own the house, right? And you own it and you live somewhere else, you're not a year-round resident all the time, right? So when we did the homestead, for the people that were here year-round, so I struggle with the idea of, taxing people more on that. I like the two-tier. I don't want to get into, who's a resident, who's not, because I don't know that we even defined.
Well, no, the point is that the three-tier would tax the seasonal and the full-time at the same rate.
At the same rate. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, Harry. So I don't know that you're happy that I'm not answering your questions as clear as you want.
That's okay,
but I
you're
like the
answering.
two-tier tax. I like what we have. I don't support the three so that they're taxed the same. And I haven't had a lot of people come up to me and say, Susan, we're unhappy with the tax structure. I think a lot of the residents, through the public workshops and et cetera, have been pretty happy with the taxes that we have and the structure in place. But again, I'm open to listen, but I'm happy
When?
for the people.
Oh, excuse me. I like the two-tier tax rate as well. I'm not in favor of going to a third tax rate. I wouldn't mind looking at it to tweak the business end of it. I really don't agree giving the big guys in town, like the Dunes Club and Stop and Shop, any type of a tax break at all. We're the envy of this whole state with our tax rate. I mean, I talk to people all over. You live in Narragansett, wow. Well, our houses are expensive. There's not much we can do about that. If you're going to sell your house, you're going to want to get the most money you possibly can. You can't tell the residents, all right, you can only sell your house for $300,000. We need families here. I mean,
That's not the question. The question is, if you wouldn't be supportive for the three-tier rate, what else would you do to address the fact that, there are, more and more rentals and less, families? That's the question.
That's what I said. What can you do? I mean, if you're going to sell your home, if somebody comes in and says, I'll give you $700,000 for it, but I'm going to rent it. But I come in and say, I'm only going to give you $500,000. I'm going to live here year-round. What are you going to do? You're going to sell it for $700,000. That's what everybody in this town is going to do. You live here, you pay a low tax rate, we have high valuations, okay? When I retire, and everybody in this room is going to eventually sell their home, we want to keep those evaluations of our home.
So-
if somebody comes in with a, yeah.
So to be clear,
To be clear.
somebody considering, whether they're going to rent it or not if they buy a house, wouldn't be influenced by the fact that they may have to pay a higher tax if they rent it than if they don't. That wouldn't influence the purchase.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
When you go for a mortgage, they look at your income, but they look at your expenses.
That's not the question.
Oh, I'm getting to the question. You want me to say yes or no, Harry? I'll say yes or no, but that's not going to answer the question.
Okay.
It's just like when I filled out my form, it says do not know, do not know, do not know, and all those. I answered all those questions. I just didn't answer them the way you wanted me to answer.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
So, yeah, we can do things to bring people in town. We can do a 10% or whatever, first home buyers, a tax relief. We can do things like that to attract families. But as far as telling the residents you have to reduce the amount of money you're going to get for your house, that's never going to happen.
Well, no, that's not the,
Yeah, well, that is the problem. If you're going to sell your house, you're going to take the most money. If these predatory people are coming in and they want to buy a house for $1 million, well, maybe $8.2 million. And that's not too far from me either, Harry. It's only about 3/4 of a mile
the
from me.
question was about the It's about the motivation as to what you do with the house, not whether you sell it for the most money, but I appreciate the answer. Okay, we've reached the final part of tonight's forum.
Yeah, sure, me.
The candidates will now be given up to 3 minutes to make a closing statement. A short bell will ring at 2 minutes 45 seconds to alert you that you need to wrap up your closing statement.
I need that.
A prolonged ring at 3 minutes will indicate that your time is up. So the closing statements will be given from left to right, beginning with Jill Lawler, ending with Win Hames. And so, Jill, whenever you're ready.
Thanks to everyone on the panel here and to all the neighborhoods. I believe you're calling yourself the 6 families this year, not the 5 families. So thanks to you all. I did not prepare a statement, but what I wanted to do was take a look at the questions asked today and then sum myself up with a summary of all the questions that were asked to me and were not asked to me. I want to first start by saying every single vote that I cast, no matter whose motion it is, whether it's Susan's, Mike's, Matt's, Pat's, or myself, I always ask myself one question: is this vote going to be the best thing for the residents of the town of Narragansett? And if it's yes, I vote yes. And if it's no, I vote no. I will continue to do that. One of the biggest things that we talked about tonight is quality of life. And I recognized my very long answer, response to a question where I included that I would like to see some type of a building inspector going into dwellings to take a look for safety reasons. I failed to include the most important part of why I was saying that. It's a way for us to go in and to take a look at homes that may have been altered and may have 5, 6, 7 bedrooms, and they're not on the database, at the rental registration database. I've seen a couple of these homes come up and then listed on Airbnb. I've called this to the attention of the building inspector. He has gone out, he has fined these individuals, and they've been made to put in forms of egress and to be able to conform to our zoning rules. So that's why I was talking about the fact we need to have a legal way to go into these dwellings, and we can accomplish this by having every 2 to 3 years have a safety protocol be done so that students are also safe. Another thing as far as quality of life, I've been speaking with the town manager about looking towards impact fees. Every single time a fire engine, a police car goes out to any type of a rental property, the town of Narragansett picks up the fee, and that simply is not right. We do have businesses in town other than Stop and Shop and other than Marshall's. They're called rental properties, and these landlords are making a lot of money, which is fine. But we should not have to pay for them to be able to reap the resources of that money. Impact fees is one way we can do that. Jim will be looking at what other towns and other cities and other states are doing, and it's something that we can also go forward. As far as the tier question that you asked, the way I responded to that is I'd like to see a 2-tier residential and a commercial tier. What I mean by that is a 2-tier residential can be very easily done by looking and cross-referencing our database for rental registration. If you're on the rental registration database, you're a rental business, you're a business, and you should be taxed higher. If you are a residential person that does not rent out your home, period, we don't need to go through in the minutia of are you there summer, are you there winter. If you don't rent it out, you don't rent it out, you get a lower rate. What this will also allow us to do is give a little bit of break to our commercial properties. So I think it accomplished a bunch of things. The zoning restrictions, we're talking about zoning tonight, and I believe it was Matt that brought up, I'm done? I had a lot of other good stuff. You want me to finish that one?
Just finish that statement.
For the zoning, Matt had brought up a point that there is currently a bill that's been passed as far as allowing homes to be built more than 35 feet. Terry Fleming, our planning board director, has brought that to the attention of a planning meeting, and we see Westerly has made some efforts toward that by putting some restrictions in. I'd love to see that the planning board bring that to the council almost as quickly as they possibly can so we can vote on that. It'd be terrible to see some dwellings go up 40, 50 feet in front of other properties and bake their view. And the other part, as far as density, someone brought up that it would be a nice idea to be able to have additional dwellings be put on existing lots and homes. That's such a bad idea. We don't want to do that. We don't want to impact our sewer.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, Matt?
Well, thank you to the associations, the neighborhood associations who hosted tonight's forum for us. Our neighborhoods are the backbone of Narragansett and the reason why so many of our residents love the town. Each of our neighborhoods is unique in its own way and it needs to be protected. On the council, I've shown a commitment to solving the issues faced by our residents in these neighborhoods. I've worked hard to solve real problems facing the town, some of which had languished for years. We focused on increased enforcement of rules and ordinances governing drunken behavior and disruptive conduct. I fought to keep our taxes low, and I'm especially proud of my tenacity in testifying for the homestead exemption, 3 trips to the General Assembly, not a welcoming place all the time. They were not excited to pass the homestead exemption for Narragansett. There were a lot of special interests against it. Years ago, there were people who fought for this, and they hit those stone walls. We were able to get through those. The General Assembly finally approved for Narragansett a homestead after more than a decade of those failed efforts. In my role in the council, I do not cater to out-of-town or out-of-state special interests. I am not a single-issue candidate. I keep my focus on the everyday Narragansett residents who want their taxes to remain low and want to enjoy their lives in our seaside town without the local government intruding on their privacy. And they expect their elected officials to solve problems and not create them. So it's been a pleasure to represent Narragansett's residents on the town council during the past several years. I take my job on the council seriously. I see representative democracy as a two-way street, and to that end, I thank the town voters for the trust that they've placed in me and ask for them to place that trust in me once again this November. Thank you.
Jesse?
First, I'd like to thank everybody from the neighborhood associations for putting this together. And thank everyone in the audience for coming out here. This is true democracy in action here. And then I'd like to thank everyone sitting up here. I'd be honored to work with anybody up here in the next term. So I appreciate it. So I know that some people are kind of giving up on the idea of families coming into town. And I totally respect and understand that opinion. I disagree, and I think that it's worth putting in the effort to keep fighting for that, for what you want your town to be. So I don't have necessarily all the answers on ways to do that. I think there are ways that we can work towards it with incentives for year-round rentals, as I mentioned, for state funding to assist families on first-time purchases in town. And I think it makes a lot of sense to work directly with these associations as well to get your ideas and see what you guys think about ways to do it as well, and learn more about what you guys are really looking for your neighborhoods to be, and just kind of understand where you're coming from. So that's something that I think could be really valuable. And because I have a young family in town, I do care about the libraries and the schools and just the general safety of the town, but you can't really sit on a council and make decisions based solely on what you personally care about. So the entire point of representation is to be able to understand and consider other people's point of view and concerns as well. So when I'm out talking to voters, the most common thing I hear is about how there's this certain lack of respect and civility among members of the council this last term. This isn't really what voters want, and it's not good for the future of the town. What I intend to do and bring to the town council, if given the chance, is a willingness to listen to the other members and to consider everyone's perspective. I want to see more 5-0 votes and less 3-2 votes. And I want to see this not because we all have the same ideals or worldview, but because we're all able to compromise and create policies that work for everyone. The art of compromise seems to be a little bit out of style these days, but I think that's something that we need to bring back. So moving forward, the town council has to change and start working together, and I'd like to be part of that change. So if you agree, I'd love your vote. Lastly, if anyone in the audience is interested in sticking around a little bit after this, I'd love to talk to you directly and just see what your concerns are. If any issues are important to you, I'll be hanging out here. So if you're interested, let's talk. Thank you.
Ricky?
Again, thank you to all the neighborhoods and the people who attended tonight. For me, it would be an honor to serve my community as a Narragansett Town Council person. I've lived here my whole life. Narragansett is a very special place for me. I believe the success of our town lies within the people who live here. But there needs to be an avenue to deliver that success. If I'm elected, I will be the avenue. I want residents to be proud of where they live and who they are represented by. Most important. I believe another key to success of our town is to elect people who are honest, have integrity, listen to the concern of the taxpayers, and are committed to making Narragansett our home. This is our home. In closing, I thank you for the opportunity to serve you and for your commitment to our town. Please remember to vote November 6th. I'm number 7 on the ballot. Thank you again.
Susan?
So I'd like to thank the neighborhood associations for holding this forum. And I just want to say I'm so grateful for the opportunity to serve for over 20 years in the town of Narragansett. I'd like to thank the residents for their continued support in the work. During my time on the town council, we've worked on town budgets that were fair and reasonable for the taxpayers. Our goal has been to provide excellent services but keep the taxes low. We have been committed to our seniors, and this term I created the South Kingston and Narragansett Senior Advisory. We presently are working on enhancing programs and improving ridership for the seniors. We have to keep working on the bike path, and that's soon to happen. We created a bike pedestrian committee to ensure a more pedestrian-friendly community. As a member of the town council, I've assisted in the purchase of the Belmont Marketplace for the new location for the Narragansett Library. I have been committed to protecting open space and have supported acquiring new land. We strive for excellent quality of life here in Narragansett by looking at all the ordinances and reviewing the policies all the time. If I'm reelected, I will continue the work that I've been working so hard. So I hope that you'll vote for me on November 5th. And I am at the bottom. Is it 6th? It's 6th, but I'm at the bottom, so you have to look for me.
Patrick?
That was a good, you want one of mine, you want some minutes for me? Because that was a good speech.
So,
All right. Okay, just horsing around again. All right, why should I be reelected? That's the question here tonight. Well, first of all, over the last almost 4 years, I've had perfect attendance, okay? And I've been up there sick as a dog, listening to that banter, okay? So, the big issue in this election is the library. Now, there's a lot of misinformation on this subject. Initially, it was a condo, 83% of a building, for $134 per square foot or $2.4 million. We rejected that. That was nonsense. Gilbane came back to the table. We carved out 1.2 acres in the pier now. Unheard of. Everybody said, oh, they're not going to do it. They won't do it. Well, they did do it. Now, some people, it's morphed into confusion and parking spaces, and we're doing this, we're doing that. It's not confusion. There's a process. There's a zoning process. There's a planning process. And we're slowly getting through it. But at the end of the day, we're going to have 1.2 acres. We're going to have ownership of 1.2 acres. It's going to say the town of Narragansett on that deed. It's going to be 63 parking spaces that we own. And another access to 17 parking spaces. And a building of 22,000 square foot with a tenant that can offset the cost for the camp charges. Whether he stays there or not, I mean, this is a deal where we could probably get it from Gilbane, put it back on the market and flip it. Okay, that's how good this deal.
Give me a card.
And we're at $128 a square foot. So all these naysayers and oh my God, it's doom and gloom, and there's mystery spaces up in the attic, and I mean, a lot of it, if you have any questions, call me, because I've been pushing to get a great deal, because we are going to change the whole conception of the pier, the whole concept of the pier for the next 50 years. I don't want to see Gilbane have another townhouse or some other space in there or an empty building for the next 50 years. Let's bring the pier down back to the center and there's so much we can do with that space. And we can take the old library, I'd like to grub it out, and turn it into 3 retail spaces so we can offset the cost of the library. Again, I fought for the 10% homestead, and I did vote for it. And some people say they fought for it, but they didn't vote for it when it came time to step up. So I want to thank you for having me here tonight. And after last year's meeting, I'm surprised I got an invitation.
All right, Win, save the best for last here.
Is this stereo? No, I only need one. Now, I want to thank everybody for coming. For those of you who don't know me, and I think I probably know everybody out here, I've been kicking around for a long, long time. I first got involved with politics back in the late 60s, and we worked very hard, even back then, to try to keep our taxes as low as possible. And I think you have to go all the way back there and see all the work that's been done over the years to see where we are. I went through converting our volunteer fire department to a full-time fire department, and I think we got one of the best ones in the state. I helped purchase the land for the middle school with Murray Lugens, had endless meetings, and we got that with absolutely no legal questions or objections, or we didn't have to go to court about it. So in essence, what I've done, as long as I've lived here, is I always put this town first in what I'm trying to do. We had, yeah, my notes are on here. Patrick borrowed them.
Those are my notes, but go ahead.
What I'm a little bit disappointed here is that Narragansett's biggest problem is college rental issue on this, and every one of us listed no. Yet it seems this whole forum is geared toward what are we going to do about the college rental issue. I would like to send more discussion about what we're doing, again, to bring families in town. As far as the homestead exemption, I was against the homestead exemption only because it affected the businesses in town. The 10% I think is going to be, it has to go up, but the businesses can't, well, they can't absorb that. But when you're doing a discount or for the businesses, you can't give the big guys this. I mean, you can carve out the small guys, give them exemptions, like Patrick said, the $35,000 on the inventory. But that, again, should be extended to the small businesses. Every time we give out an exemption, it costs all the residents money. So if you're doing a homestead exemption and then you're giving it away to the businesses, that doesn't make sense. Homestead exemption should be for the people who live in town. But again, I will continue, whether I'm elected or not, I would like to be elected, to work as hard as I can for the betterment of this town. I got more time?
Sure.
Give me that bell. Give me that bell.
No, and I can work with anybody up here. I've known Patrick for, actually, since he was, I've known Patrick since he was born. I lived across the street from him. And Ricky, I've known everybody here for years. So I can work with anybody. I would ask for your support. Thank you.
All right. Well, at this point, we'd like to thank all the candidates for participating in this event. We invite the candidates to stick around to meet and to socialize with the audience members. At this time, we're going to officially conclude this town council candidate forum, but I do think that the candidates deserve a round of applause for their... All right, thank you all. We're adjourned.